Doing something solely for money is going to keep you broke. And it seems counterintuitive, but if you really think about it, any field you go into is going to have saturation. Any field, no matter what you could think of. You could want to become a doctor, there's competition there. You want to be a photographer, there's competition there. You want to be a banker, there's competition there. You want to be a lawyer, guess what? You're not going to be the only one. So no matter what field you go into, there's going to be saturation. So that's no excuse. There's no excuse to say like, oh, I want to do this, but it's so competitive. Bro, anything you want to do is competitive. And so then you're left with thinking like, well, what do I enjoy? What am I good at? And then what's going to make the most money? But you need to take the money equation out of it too and consider, well, what would I do if everything made me $50K a year, no matter what, across the board, everything. And the reason you need to do that is because it's easy to get blinded by money. It's easy to convince yourself that you really want to be a doctor when really you're just looking at the paycheck. And you can say, no, I want to help people. And you can really blind yourself just because like in the back of your head, like like the paycheck is at the end of the day. But here's the thing you need to consider. Like I mentioned earlier, no matter what field you go into, there's going to be competition. So the thing is, if you go into a field and you don't love it, you're going to be competing against people who really freaking love it. And that means that in order for you to stand out, you're going to have to work 10 times harder than those people. And even then, you're probably still going to be behind because those people genuinely love it. And it's really hard and almost impossible to outwork genuine passion and love. Because somebody can work 10 hours and it feels like he worked 2, and you work 10 hours and you feel like you worked 20. And so now you can see like it's impossible for you to beat those people, to get ahead of those people. Which means even if you go into a high paying field, you're going to be at the bottom if you really don't like it. If you're being a lawyer or whatever, just because you think like the paychecks are higher and it's going to put you in a better position, it's going to put you in a worse position. Not only will you be not wealthy financially, but you're also going to be broke spiritually and mentally, right? Because really, when you get older, you realize paychecks don't matter as much as like your happiness and your well-being. You want to be rich, not just financially. You want to be rich mentally and spiritually as well. And that comes from doing stuff that you love. It doesn't come from paychecks. I can promise you that. So what I'm trying to say here is, if you're struggling to find out what you want to do, you can ask yourself, number one, if I was going to fail, no matter what I tried, I was going to fail. I won't be successful in it. Then what are you going to do? This forces you to focus on the process rather than the outcome. Right? So it forces you to say like, well, if I'm going to fail, I won't be successful no matter what I do. Then what can I do that way, at least day to day, I'm like enjoying what I'm doing still, even though I'm not successful in it. And then of course, the other question is to ask yourself, well, if every job paid the same, then what would I do? And this forces you just to get the money out of the equation. Just focus on the process, again, the day-to-day job. Because a lot of times we don't understand what a job really is. Sometimes we look at like a doctor and we get distracted by like what we see on TVs and movies. When really 80% of what a doctor does is study. Like that's 80% of what they do is study and paperwork. And so if you get blinded by like, oh, I want to become a doctor because they have status and like money and like they save lives. Doctors aren't just like saving lives every second of their work. Like 80% of what they do is literally just studying and paperwork, reviewing charts and stuff like that. They're not, unless you're like an ER doctor, most of the time they're not doing what you think they're doing in terms of like, oh, they're just saving lives like all the time. They're just like an angel that comes into a room and like, bam, your life is saved. Next room, bam, your life is saved. It's not the case. And same thing with the lawyers. Sometimes we see like lawyers on TV and like they're in the courtroom and they're like winning cases and we're like, man, that looks exciting. When really a lawyer is just all paperwork and reading. It's just reading and paperwork and reading. And so if you like to do that, great. But if you're like, man, I don't, like to do the 80% of what they do, you're just blinded by what you think they do. So another thing you can ask yourself as well that will help you is, what would you do if money wasn't a concern? What would you do? Right? Because a lot of times what we choose to do is because we choose to do it to make money. But if like money was a concern, would you still do that? And it was like, no, I'm just doing it to make money. Then it's like, don't do it. Don't go into it. Because again, the whole point of this video I'm trying to make is like, if you go into something you don't enjoy, you won't make it because you're going to be competing against people who freaking love, who genuinely love it. So if you want to be a coder, like if you're like, oh man, I want to be a coder because, I heard they make really good money. They have good job flexibility. And if you go into it and you're like, dude, I hate it, but I'm going to stick through it because I want those paychecks. You're going to be competing against coders who freaking love coding, who it's a video game to them. And you really think that you can outwork those people. You really think that you can just put in the grit and outwork people who love it. You cannot. You can't. And so the only way to really be successful in any career is to do something you enjoy. And you have to enjoy a part of it. There's some piece of it that you have to find genuine joy in, that is driving, that's even giving you energy back as you're doing it, instead of just sucking all your energy. Because there's no way you can compete. Again, every field has competition, and you're not going to be able to compete and be at the top of some field if you genuinely hate it, but you're just trying to grit and grind through it so that way you can get a career or a paycheck or something like that. You're going to be stuck at the bottom. So anyways, the point of this video is like, don't get distracted by what everybody else is doing. Don't get distracted by the paychecks. Don't get distracted by what you think a job is really about. If there's a career you think you want to go in, make sure you do research. Maybe shadow somebody in that career if you can, so you can figure out what they're really doing day to day instead of what you think they're doing. And then realize that if you don't really enjoy something, like, get out of it, or at least use it as a stepping stone into the thing that you do enjoy. Because if you don't enjoy it, there's no way you can't compete. Again, you're competing with people who genuinely love it, and it doesn't. You could have an extra 24 hours in your day, you still won't win. You still cannot compete against people who genuinely love it. So that's all I wanted to say. I just want to get on here and do that, because I feel a lot of people are kind of confused of where they want to go in life, and it's because they're being dragged in all these different directions by status and money and this and that. But this will simplify how to figure it out for yourself. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.